Go to that one. He's kicking me out.
So, today you are going to experience a very special, important presentation. And this year is a highly significant year in Holocaust studies and Holocaust history because it's the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. It's the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Dachau. And those were two of the concentration camps that your speaker survived. So, right now, this very minute, you are going to be witnesses to the Holocaust. And when you're a witness, you need to focus 100% on what you're listening to and what you're seeing. So, without further ado, Mr. Joseph Alexander.
Thank you, David. My name is Joseph Alexander. I'm a Holocaust survivor from Poland, and I survived 12 camps. I lived in a small town in Poland, and my father was in business, and we had a very good life until 1939, when the Germans came into Poland. They divided Poland in two parts. One half was annexed to the Third Reich. The second part was Poland under German occupation. After a few weeks, they came to town, and as you may know, some of you, at Europe, every town has a town square. Let's say this is the town square. We lived the second house from this corner, and the third house was an uncle of mine. After a few weeks, they came in, they went after my uncle, went around the square, and they gave the people, they had 10 minutes to get their possessions and get out in the middle of the square, and they took them away. For some reason, I'll never know why, they left those three houses where we were the second house. But rumors started right away that they're going to come back 3 days later and take the rest of us. So my dad had three sisters living about 25 kilometers before Warsaw. That was where it was Poland under German occupation. Life there was going on almost normal. So my dad said, I'm not going to wait for them to come and get us 10 minutes to get out. So he got out, he rented a big, deep wagon. We had deep wagons, about 6-8 feet deep. And we packed up most of the stuff from the store. And you had to put a few pieces of household goods like bedding, a couple pieces of furniture on top. Because from our part to the other part, you had to go through a border. So put a few pieces of goods on the top so that we moved. And my parents and the had a younger brother and one sister, and they left. I remained with two older sisters, and we were loading up on second wave. In the meantime, we had Polish people from around the city coming in, trying to buy anything they can get. Because they took the people, the business people out, afraid they won't be able to get anything. So they can buy anything they can get. They came in. And I sold to one man, I sold a bicycle, and I sold him a boat of shirt material. On the way home, he had to pass by the police station, and he was stopped and find out where did he get that. He thought maybe they were looting. So where did you get it? He said, I bought it. then show me a receipt. He said, I don't have a receipt. Then go bring the person who sold it to me. So he came back to me and he says, you have to go with me to the police station, if not, they're gonna come here. And we had already the second wagon loaded, just ready to go. So I went with him to the police station. He asked me, did you sell this? I said, yes. Why didn't you give him a receipt? I said, we told him we didn't give a receipt. So I took the boat material, smacked the guy in, okay, go. And I went back, and my sisters were waiting for me, and we took off with the second wagon. And we went to a little town before, about 25 kilometers before Warsaw, named Glonia. And we went there. So we came there, and like I say, life, everybody was still in business, and everything was going on almost normal. But everybody has to go to work. So that was 1939, and that's when I went to my first camp. So I went to a camp. It was a work camp. You work during the week, and the weekend you can go home. So, but we were working, building a canal, and I was standing in the water up to the knee, and that was late October, November, which in Europe that's already winter time, and I was staying in the water without boots. So after a while, I was getting blood poisoning. I had sores on my arms, on my legs. So after going home one weekend, I said, I'm not going back. So Monday morning, the police came to look for me. So my dad said, he's not here, he's supposed to be in the camp. So I stayed away from home for a while. And that was the time, if you heard about the Warsaw Ghetto. That was where they started to build the wall in Warsaw where the ghetto was going to be. And when after they built the wall, you know, it was a very small area, and they put in about 265,000 people. So after they got through building the wall, they came out with an order, anybody who lives within 50, 60 kilometers in the surrounding area of Warsaw had to move into the ghetto. So I moved into the ghetto. The life in the ghetto at the time, you can't even imagine how terrible bad it was. People were dying. Every day you walked out as dead people on the streets, on the sidewalks, everywhere. I lived in the ghetto over 4 months, but back home, since we left, nothing changed. Everything remained the same. So my parents decided for an older sister, and I had a younger brother and we should go back home. So to go back home, you have to get out of the ghetto. So we paid off the guard at the gate to get out. So we got out. I walked for about 2 blocks, and I had a Polish teenager comes over. He said, give me some money or I'm going to report you. So I thought I'd give him some money and I'll get rid of it. And I kept walking, and for a few more blocks, and he got on the streetcar, rode the streetcar, and got off and came over and gave me some more money. So this time I gave him some more money, but I changed the street and I lost him. And I walked to the outskirts of town, and I met my sister and brother. And we went home. So we came back home. Like I said, everything remained the same since we left, nothing changed. But it only lasted 3 days. I was free for 3 days. After being there 3 days, came out an order that all the men from 16 to 60 report to the schoolhouse. So I had to report to the schoolhouse, and off I went to the camps. And I was going from camp to camp. The first camp again, we were building a dam which we had a little electric cars. I don't know if you see sometimes from the coal mines what they have. Those little cars, you fill them up one place, and you take them to another place, and you dump it. So to fill up those cars, the work was very hard work. And the food you were getting was in the morning, you got a piece of bread like this in the morning, and a cup of coffee, and you went to work. You came back from work, you got a soup. And the soup was most of the time was from the peels of potatoes or spinach. From this food, you couldn't exist. The only way you could exist, because we worked with civilians. And if you could manage to get just even a little extra food, that's the only way you could survive. And so people were dying every day. Every morning they came to the barracks and took dead people out every day. And where we were, there were more in a city, near the city named Poznan. And there were a lot of sub-camps around the city. The same thing happened at other camps, so they combined 2, 3 camps into one. After a while, the same thing happened at those camps. So that's why I could move. I was moving from one place to another. And I was working one camp or laying cobblestones in the street. And I was building work in the sewers. We were putting in sewers. Then we worked in one camp. We're building an airport. I was laying the railroad tracks. After being in 7 camps, a train arrived. And we got on the train. The destination we were going, it takes maybe 5 hours, 6 at the most. But we were riding around for 3 days. And it wasn't a passenger train, a cattle car train, where you put 40, 50 people into one boxcar with a little 2-foot window. And riding around for 3 days with no food, no water, no facility. By the time we arrived at our destination, about 30–40% of the people were already dead on the train. And we came to a destination where, to a city, a little city named Oswiecim, which actually, there it was Camp Auschwitz, with the German city, there's a city Oswiecim, but Germans came named Auschwitz, the camp. We arrived there, so whoever could walk got off the train. We were lined up in rows of 5, and we met, if you heard about Dr. Joseph Mengele. He was called the Doctor of Death. He selects people for human experiment or to the gas chamber. We met Dr. Mengele, and he said there's 6 kilometers to the camp, to the walk to the camp. So he said he selects some people to go to the left. The people on the left are going to be taken on trucks. And he picked me up to go to the left. And I come to the left and I look around, old people, sick people. I said, that's not the kind of people I like to be with. If I would come from home, I wouldn't know the difference. But I was already in 7 camps when I came there. Every camp I was trying to get in to go to work with the biggest, strongest men. And here he tells me to go here to the left with the old sick people. I said, that's not for me. But the only luck was for me, it was after midnight. If it would have been daytime, I don't know if I could have done it. And as he moved further down, I ran back to the other side. After I ran back to the other side, and we walked to Auschwitz. Walked to Auschwitz, came to Auschwitz, I got a shower, and I came out of the shower, and I got a tattoo. From that moment on, you had no name. That was your name. So I got a tattoo, and we walked. There's two Auschwitz. There's Auschwitz, there's Birkenau. They're about 3 kilometers apart. And I walked over to Birkenau. And I came in Birkenau. I saw Mengele 2 more times in Birkenau. But sometimes he came to select people, so we didn't trust him. So friends of mine, we were hiding, didn't report, didn't show up. But then the camp was getting empty. They were taking people out, and they weren't bringing people in at that time. So at time they came, and they said they need tailors. So my grandfather, my father, we were all tailors. So I report for the tailors, and they come in front of me and said, "You go back. We have enough. We don't need any more." So I'm still back in the camp. Still back in the camp, and that was the time, a short time after this, if you heard about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. It was in 1943. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. After that, they said they need a big transport, but they don't want to take any people from Poland. They only wanted people from Hungary, Greece, Italy. But on the end, they were short about 300 people. They said, now we'll take some people from Poland. So I report, and the same thing, you get on the train and riding around for 3 days again, without food, without anything. And that was the time I was going back for the second time to the Warsaw Ghetto. Came back to the Warsaw Ghetto. All the buildings were burned out. There was no building left. There were some remaining walls standing up. And we were coming back. We were supposed to clean up, take the walls down brick by brick and clean them and put them up in stacks about 8 to 10 feet high. But when we came back, the buildings were burned out. There was no camp. So they gave us some prefabs to put together some barracks. And until we put together some barracks, there was no facilities. So the shirt I was wearing a shirt, there was no shirt left. It was just some shred. It was eaten up from lice. Until we built the camp. On Sunday you got a shower, and you got some fresh clothes. And in the meantime, after that, the typhus broke out. So the typhus broke out, so anybody who, if you report to the school, to the hospital, nobody ever came out. That was the end. And the typhus is you get high temperatures, high fever. So when I got it, I didn't report to the hospital, because I was lucky I had a couple, we called it a couple, like a foreman. He was a middle-aged man, he was a German man, but he was very good, so he didn't care what we do. So when I got this, I was sitting behind those stacks of bricks like this for about 3 days till I got over the temperature, the fever. And I was okay. So, but this was actually, that was one camp, it was one of the better camps we had, because we had plenty of food. Because when the buildings were burned out, There were a lot of household goods, pieces of furniture, clothing, and we were cleaning up those bricks. We had Polish people come in with a horse and wagon, excuse me, and they took those bricks to the railroad station. They were sending them back to Germany. So when the Polish people came in, they brought in food and we were trading for the food, what we were finding. And we were trading, we had plenty of food. Then a short time after that, one night the Polish underground attacked our camp. And they were trying to free our camp. They were fighting all night, they were unsuccessful. So the next morning, they took us out, and we had to go out of town. We had to jog to get out of town. We were afraid we were going to get attacked in the city by the underground. So we did jog to get out of town, and came about late dusk, late in the afternoon around dusk, and they put us up in a big field where farmers grazed their cows, and the ground is a very moist ground. So they put us up on that field, and whatever means you had, you dug up some mud and took your bottom of the shirt and you squeezed the mud through to get a little water. So we got a little water. The next morning we start walking. And we walked, come to the next city. There was a river. So let us go to the river to get some water. Two of our people went a little further into the river. They thought maybe they're going to escape when they get out on the other side. And so they got shot, got killed in the river. And we got some water and we walked. And the next town, there was the same river, but they said you can only want 100 people at a time to go to the river to get some water. So we got some water and we start walking, and we walked, and that day was very heavy rain. You were walking soaking wet. Until late in the afternoon, we arrived at the railroad station, and we stayed overnight, and got on a train, the same type train, and this time we were on the train about 3.5 days. We were going to Germany. Went to Germany to a camp named Dachau. Dachau was the first camp Hitler built in 1933 for political prisoners. Then he turned it into a concentration camp. So we came to Dachau. We were walking around Dachau nothing for about 2 weeks, because they were establishing 12 camps within 50, 60 kilometers in the surrounding area of Dachau. They all were by numbers from 1 to 12. So the first camp I went to was camp number 1, and I was working for a farmer digging potatoes. That lasted about 3 weeks, and I was sent to another camp, camp number 7, about 50 kilometers from Dachau, to a city called Landsberg am Lech. And that was a small camp. We were only about 150 people there. But we were a small group that we were in the camps already over 4 years. So we had the privilege of getting the better jobs in the camp. So my friends they worked in the kitchen, some were the police, and that was the only camp I was where women was in the same camp. They blocked off by barbed wire one corner of the camp, but we went to work together. Some friends of mine got small jobs, others, and I got a group of 10 people. We were 5 boys and 5 girls. And I was working in the kitchen right outside the gate for the German guards. And I had two men in charge of the kitchen. They were German middle-aged men. They weren't the regular army. But they were very nice men. They were very good to me. So I was working there, and after work, I was going back to the camp. I took food for my friends, and we had, every day almost, we had soup left over. So we had some milk cans, put in the milk can. In the morning, people were going to work, they had to pass by our kitchen. So I stopped them and I gave them some food. A couple of times the officer in charge of the guards complained to my people that I'm holding up the people going to work. So they told me, don't worry about it, let them talk, do what you're doing. So that lasted for a long more time until actually April 28, 1945. All the 12 camps, we had to go back to Dachau. So we came back to Dachau, stayed overnight, and the next morning we were going on a march. They called it a death march. They're supposed to take us in Germany, in the mountain, there's a ski resort named Garmisch. And that's where they're supposed to take us and to kill us there. But we knew we're not going to be walking too far, because we could hear the fighting going on right not behind us. Excuse me. So we knew that we're going to be not good. not, I can clear my throat. Okay, maybe now better. So anyway, we knew that the American troops were not far behind us. So we walked for about 2 days, and we crossed a little bridge. Bridge was blowing up, and so one half of us was on one side, one on the other side. I was on the right side where we were in a village. In that village there was a little forest. So they took us into the forest, and they asked for volunteers to take the sick people into the village and put them into the farmers, to the barn, and told the volunteers to come back. One of the volunteers was a friend of mine, and on the way back, they found a dead horse in the snow. So they cut off some pieces from the horse. My friend came back with a piece of meat like this, and he said, do something. So we were in the forest, so we had plenty of wood, so I made a fire, and I was barbecuing. Believe me, that was the best meal we had in a long time. And during the night, the guards disappeared. So the next morning, the German police came, and they took us into that village, and they disappeared. That was in the morning about 8, 9 o'clock. So we just walked around that village until about between 12 and 1 o'clock. We had an American tank moved in, we were liberated. When the American tank moved in, so we saw there was a group, we were only about 9 of us. We were in the camps after over 5 years already. We didn't want to get blocked in because the American troops came behind that tank and they closed off the village. They didn't let anybody else, but we broke through right away when the tank moved in and started to see where the next town is. So we walked for about maybe a kilometers or two. There was a German bakery. So we got in the bakery and everybody got a bread. And after you had a bread, you were okay. And we start walking, and we come to a town named Bart Hills. And we come in and see 3 American soldiers walking. But they couldn't walk. They were so drunk. They were holding on to each other. And they were Czechoslovakian descent. So they saw us coming in the clothes we were wearing. They realized, asked me, "Are you Polish?" I said, "Yes." So I said, "Come on." And they took us into an underground bunker. It was a warehouse. You couldn't see the end of it. They took us into that bunker. And so first thing, we changed clothes. Everybody took a backpack to put some food in. And there was a big row of bicycles chained up. They broke the chain. And everybody took a bicycle. Now we have to find a place to stay, because the American troops who came into that village, they brought all the people into that city, and there was a German Air Force base. They made it a DP camp, displaced person camp. But we didn't want to go in the camp. So we have to find a place. So we tried to get out on the street. You couldn't get out because it was after 6 o'clock. It was curfew. 6 o'clock was curfew. So we hopped over about 3 or 4 fences, and we came to a German inn, but it was taken over by the American troops. So in the back of that inn, there was an empty house. So we took over the house. We moved in there. And we stayed in that house for about 10 days. And they said after 10 days, so after 10 days, we have to move into the camp. So we moved into the camp, and we were taken back to another DP camp to Munich. It was a DP camp there, but you can live at the camp if you want, or you are free. You can go any place you want. So I lived in the camp for about 3 days. And then friends of mine and I decided we'd go back to the city where we were, where camp number 7 was, in the city of Landsberg. And Landsberg was one of the biggest camps, DP camps in Germany. And so we went to the camp, we registered, they gave us a room. So I stayed overnight, and I moved out. The reason we went to the camp to register is because there was a lot of DP camps, so we used to go and register in case anybody of your family survived. So we used to go and check the lists. So I moved out about 7 kilometers from town to a farm, and I lived in a farmhouse. I lived in the farmhouse for about 6 weeks, and then I decided to go back home to Poland to find out, to see if anybody in my family survived who came back. So I came back to Poland, go to the house, and I had some survivors living on the second floor. On the first floor there were some Polish people. But they told me no immediate family survived, came back. Well, one cousin of mine, he was a year younger than I. We were separated. We weren't on camps together. We were separated in Auschwitz when Dr. Mengele told me go to the left. That's when we were separated. So he survived, but he was in a different town. And at that time, it was very bad for the survivors who came back to Poland, because the Polish people were killing survivors who came back. because when they took the Jews out, they moved into the houses and the properties. Now they're coming back, they didn't want to give up the houses, they were killing a lot of survivors. They killed in one town, they killed 42 survivors in one town. So I went saying we're going back to get my cousin and we're going back to Germany. So we went back, the cousin, and we're going back to Germany. To get back, you have to go through Czechoslovakia. And Czechoslovakia was occupied by the Russians. So you need a visa to go through Czechoslovakia. So it's only the city named Krakow, not far from the border between Poland and Czech. There's a Czech consulate in Krakow, you can go get a visa. So I went out, I got some pictures, and I went to Krakow and I got a visa. And we got on the train, go through Czechoslovakia, come to the German border. A Russian officer comes down and to check the papers, and I show him that visa. He said you have to go back to Prague, which was the capital of Czechoslovakia, to get a stamp. There was no government in Prague. That was about 7-8 weeks after the end of World War II. There was no government in Prague to get a stamp. So I said, let's try to go through Austria. So come to the Austrian border. I took everybody off the train, took away all the papers, and they put us up for about 3 days. They were getting together a group of representatives from all the European countries. And then you had to go through them, and whatever country you were born, they send you back to your country of birth. So I go in for an interview. He asked me, where were you born? I said, in Germany. What language do you speak? I said, German. Where in Germany? Cologne, Germany. And on that visa I had was a stamp from a Polish Red Cross. So I told him, I said, look, there's a stamp from the Polish Red Cross that I'm going home. So he showed it to the Polish representative, said, yeah, that's right. So actually, we were 78 people. So 22 of them went on the list to go back to Germany, and the rest, I don't know what happened to them. So the next morning, the Russian guards took us to the border of Austria. We were right near the border. They hand us over to the Austrian border guard to get on the train to get to Vienna. To get to Vienna, we come, and Vienna was divided at that time in 4 parts. You had American, British, Russian, and French. To get to Germany, you had to be on the American side. So to be on the American side, you had to go back, take a train, go back to a city named Salzburg, about 60 kilometers from there, cross over a river on boat, and we came to the American side, rented a truck, and went back to Germany. So we were back in Germany. And let me tell you something else, that when I was in Birkenau, in Auschwitz, I watched people run into the electric fence to get electrocuted. I saw people being beaten to death. I had to watch 3 hangings, people being hung, trying to escape, they got cut, and then on Sunday you had to go watch them being hung. So that's what the life was going on. And so I was back in Germany for 4 more years, because there's no place you could go. You didn't have a passport, to go to the place. You have to wait until some country opens up. So one time, then they said you can go now Canada, you can go to Canada. You go to register. We went to register to go to Canada. Canada took a long time. They have to wait until they call you. It took a long time, didn't hear anything. So a short time after that, a friend of mine from the next village said, Joe, you can go now to Munich and you can register to go to America. So we went and registered to go to America. And it was a very short time. I got a notice to go through the American doctor, and then they had to go through the FBI to check you out. And it didn't take long. I got a note to go to the port called the Bremenhaven to get the boat to go to America. So I arrived in America on May 30th, 1949. And I arrived in New York. And to come here, everybody had to have a sponsor. Either you had the relatives or an organization. I was sponsored by a Jewish organization, and my contract was to go to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So I went to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I lived there about 6 months. And I came in Maine, and that cousin of mine who survived, he had an uncle here in Santa Monica, and he came in October. So I came in October and he told the uncle that I'm in Pennsylvania, and we were the only two survivors of both of our families. So the uncle called me a few times, I should come here so we can be together. So I arrived in California, in Los Angeles in January 1950. And here I am. Now let me show you something here, some of the papers. You see this one here. That's the liberation from Dachau. Then I've got this one here. That's the liberation from Auschwitz. And this one is from Munich. This one here, as you can see, it shows that I was in the camps from 1939 to May 2nd, 45. And some of the camps, these are the uniforms we were wearing in some of the camps. And this, I don't know, is it this way or the other? No, turn it the other. This is the way we lived. One section was for 3 people, with some shelves like. And I don't know, did you read any books from Elie Wiesel? Holocaust survivor, wrote a lot of books. That's him right here. That's Elie's book, Night, if you know. So this is the documents. And here, yeah. Let me see.
Do you want here?
This, can you see this? This one here. That's my friend who brought that piece of horse meat. And this was my cousin over here. So,
There's some guy in the middle.
there's some guy in the middle, I don't know who he is. So, this is the life we went through. And so now, do you have any questions for me?
Before that, you wanted to say.
Oh, yeah. You know, there's a lot of anti-Semitism going on now. And there's also, there's a lot of Holocaust deniers out there. Don't listen, if you hear anybody, don't listen to what they say, because I call them they're crazy. That's what I call them. Because the evidence from all the camps are still in existence. You have the gas chambers, the ovens, everything is still in existence. You go today to Auschwitz, Dachau, Majdanek, Treblinka, Buchenwald. There are thousands of people going every day visiting these camps from all over the world. So the evidence is still in existence, so don't be afraid. Don't listen to them. And if you do hear something which is not anything, any suspicion, don't be afraid to report to the authorities. Because you know what's going on. Even here in the California, you had Pittsburgh, and you had San Diego, Oceanside here. There's a lot of those things going on. So don't believe, and if you do see or hear anything, report to the authorities. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right, I forgot. Yeah, I forgot to mention, the people that said, was Mengele picked out the people that told you to go to the left, the old and sick people. The next morning we found out they went straight to the gas chamber. And if I didn't run back to the other side, I wouldn't be here talking to you. So, okay, now, do you have any questions now?
So students, teachers, if you can help me select at least 2 students per class with questions prepared, they can line up over here and ask questions. Just send them this way.
It really could be anybody. It doesn't have to be. However, it's not a time to start talking. It's not time to start talking. Start using your brain right now and think of a question.
Ms. Legato, they have any students?
What were some places where you had to hide during the Holocaust?
Where did you have to hide? Like maybe in the camp, how could you hide?
Well, we used to hide behind the barracks.
Thank you.
You know, maybe you can see how that's just the lady because it's so.
Well,
Okay.
My name is Emily. I just wanted to know if it was hard for you to adapt to life in America.
If it was hard for you to adaptively.
No, it wasn't. It was very easy. I had no problem.
Yeah, get closer.
Before the soldiers came to your house, did you notice anything suspicious?
Before the soldiers came to the house, did you notice anything suspicious?
Was it suspicious before the soldiers came?
Yeah. No, there was no suspicion. They just came in and just told you got 10 minutes to get out. Yeah. But we're not prepared for it. You are.
My question was, why do you think it's so important to educate current and future generations about the importance of the Holocaust?
Why is it important to educate future generations about the Holocaust?
Well, the future, to educate the future, then we hope that it won't happen again. That's why we have to let, especially you young kids, especially you, the youth, to let them know what happened, because like I told you before, there's a lot of Holocaust deniers. So you see here, you're talking to a survivor who survived it, so don't believe what they say. That's why it's important to talk to the youth today, so that hope that it doesn't happen again. Not just any Holocaust, not just the Jewish Holocaust. Anybody, any suspicion, anybody.
I have a question. How old are you?
Well, I don't know how old. Anybody can guess?
95.
Huh?
I heard the right one back here.
97.
97. November.
So, the question, oh, you have another question? The question that was asked about why it's important for you, because you are the future, and generations after you, to know about the Holocaust. I'm just going to read something that a Protestant minister in Germany wrote, and he was put into a concentration camp for 7 years. First, they came for the communists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the Catholics, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Catholic. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. So that's something you need to think about, what that means, what that meant at that time, but it also what that means today, now, in this country, in this school, in this city, because you have a responsibility. If you see hate, hear hate, prejudice, racism, if you hear bullying or see bullying, don't just walk by and pretend like it doesn't exist. Don't just ignore it.
You need to say something about it. You need to do something about it. Because hate does not go away by itself. She's not loud. Wait, she's not loud enough. She has to get closer.
Go to the mic.
What were your thoughts as you were going into the concentration camp? Did the Nazis ever tell you what was going to happen to you? Also, what kept you going when things got hard?
No, they never told us what's going to happen. They told us we're going to work. But they didn't tell us the truth. Going to work. But how, what kind of work, and how they're going to feed us so we can do the work. They never did.
Then there was the other question about
What?
how did you keep going?
Oh, how do I keep going? Yes, that's a good question. How do I keep going? Is, well, I was fortunate enough, no matter what camp I was, I always managed to get a little extra food. That's all I needed, just a little extra food to get you going. And stay away. There's a lot of people didn't survive because they gave up. They told you they went to the electric fence. They couldn't take it anymore. They gave up. They doing things that they were beaten to death. That's what I try to stay away from. And the only thing what kept me going is because I never lost faith. I never gave up. I said to myself, I may have a bad day today, but I hope tomorrow it will be a better day. That's what made me survive.
Hello, sir. My question is, I would like to know if you had kids, and if you had kids, what did you teach them about the Holocaust?
Well, there's a kid right there.
There's my daughter.
Basically, he told us that what he said, no matter what, you have to keep going. You do the best you can in everything. You know, he always raised us to strive for the best. If we couldn't do the best that we had wanted to, as long as we could feel we did the best, that was fine for him. But he's always been my hero and my inspiration, because anybody that can go through that hell and be the only one in 8 in his family that survived, that goes without saying. So when I start to have that little pity party in my head and think about how terrible something is or how bad I feel, I draw on his strength. And that's what keeps us going. And my brother, I know, does the same thing. I have a younger brother. Mm-hmm.
Hello, my name is Alan Meredith. I was just wondering, because during your talk, I heard you talk about a DP camp, so I was just wondering what a DP camp exactly was.
What, a
DP camp.
DP camp?
Yeah.
DP camp was displaced person camp. It means that you're a person without a country. That's what DP camp means.
I actually have a question. I'm a history teacher here. My name is Mr. Springer, and the question is,
You mean justice, you mean with the Nuremberg trial?
Like, do you think it provided justice to you?
Yes. Yes, it did. There was actually more to be done, more should have been done. But the most important thing was that the Nuremberg trial was the most justable trial.
So the fact that they had it.
Yes.
Now, my understanding was what it really hinged on was that the Nazis who were the planners were the ones that received the most serious sentences, and the ones that were basically following the orders got the less serious sentences. But they also took into consideration the way the guards treated the people who were captives.
Well, yes, it's true, but the problem was not too many of the guards were cut. A few of them, there was only a few, maybe 2, 3 of them, who were recognized. And I think they got some justice.
They're still looking for them, too.
They're still, yes,
I hope they do. You track every one of those.
that's right.
So, part of what you need to do is educate yourself about what you heard, what you learned, because we cannot let this happen again anywhere, anytime, and I'm talking about this country too, because there are people in this country, like Mr. Alexander said, who think that the Holocaust didn't occur. There are people in this country who are actually putting the swastika, you know, the Nazi sign, they're putting it on their neck, or they're putting it on jackets and motorcycles and so on, and they were high school students who were putting the red cups into a swastika sign, high school kids. They do not understand what that means. It's part of your responsibility to make sure that everybody does understand what it means. What the swastika means, it's not just a funny symbol. It's not at all cool. It represents what happened to 6 million Jewish people. They were murdered. And 5 million other people. We're talking about gypsies, we're talking about gay people, we're talking about Catholics, we're talking about all kinds of other people. We're talking about, the Nazis killed 11 million people. So when they don't take that seriously, when you don't get what that means, then you're allowing hate, you're allowing this kind of prejudice to grow into something that will resemble death in this country. And we cannot allow it. And that's part of what your job is. So part of our program is we ask you to write letters to the speakers that come to your school. So we ask you to write a letter to Mr. Alexander, including 3 parts. Number 1 is what you learned. And I know some of you were trying to take notes, but in reality, that doesn't work in a presentation. It's something where you really need to listen, and you need to take it with your ears that go to your brain, but not only that, it goes to your heart. Because the second part of what we want you to write is, what do you feel about it? What do you feel about what you've learned? What do you think about what you learned. And the third part is, can you relate it to your family? You know, this country is made up of people from all over the world. In Los Angeles, it's probably the most diverse population in the United States. Like, I was a teacher in the LA school district also, and there are 90 languages in the LA school district. That means at least 90 countries represented. But it's not just that. This whole country is made up of all kinds of people. People who, and people who may have fled their country to come to a better place, to a better life in this country. And to get there, maybe your parents, maybe your grandparents, maybe your great-grandparents had to go through something difficult. And you can put that in your letter. Do you want to share any more? But I do want to say one or two other things. One is, I was telling you about the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. That was January 27th, just about less than a month ago. And in Poland, in Auschwitz, there were 125 survivors from all over the world coming and actually going back into Auschwitz, because it's still there. And they walked with the president of Poland through the gate that Joseph mentioned. And on the top of that gate, it says, Arbeit macht frei.
Right.
And that's German. Work makes freedom. So the Nazis are saying, as you go through this gate, you're going to work and it's going to make you free. It was complete opposite. There's a book called 1984 by George Orwell. If you haven't read that book, pretty good book. It tells of a world where it's like doublespeak, which means that what was said, it's really the opposite. As you heard. So, the other thing is coming up, and I think I'm going to ask your school, or I'm going to ask actually the whole school district to commemorate, which is April 21. It's Holocaust Remembrance Day in the United States. January 27 was International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And that's the day that Auschwitz was liberated. That was by the Russians, actually. And then in April, isn't it like the end of April, Dachau?
No, Dhaka was liberated. I was liberated May 2nd.
May 2nd. So,
May 2nd, 45.
yeah. So the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Dachau, which Mr. Alexander told you was the first concentration camp that Hitler set up. Very important to know that. And then 1933. See, the Holocaust really started in 1933. So that's in April, beginning of May, but April 21 in America is Holocaust Remembrance Day. And it's something that maybe I can talk to the school board. I also work in the Glendale School District, and I'm actually going to speak to the Board of Education on April 7th in Glendale, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it in Los Angeles, but maybe there'll be a way that there be a moment of silence on April 21 at the beginning of the day in honor of all the people murdered by the Nazis. So think about it.
Also on 2015, I was invited by the German government to come back to celebrate 70 years the liberation of Dachau. So I went back and we were celebrating for 5 days. And I also, I don't know, some of you maybe know. I met and I spoke. You know what the Chancellor of Germany is? Angela Merkel. As you can see, yeah. I spoke to her in Dachau 4 years ago. Now, actually, I have now an invitation to come back for the 75th liberation in April. So, I don't know if I'm going to make it this time to go back. But I was back there for that. And I've been back a few times. Matter of fact, 2011, I took my daughter and her husband, and we went to the camps and to the town where I grew up and I was born. We were there 2011. And before that, in 2004, I was there with my girlfriend there. We went there, went to the camps, go to the camps. And did the thing. So I've been back a few times. And now I get New Year's card every year from Dachau. So every year I get a New Year's card from Dachau. I think that's it.
So one more thing, those letters that I talked to you about, they're due next week. So you have 1 week. And it can be homework, teachers, it can be homework. Doesn't have to, if you have time in class, but otherwise, and if you can type, that'd be nice. Doesn't have to be typed, but it has to be readable. But anyway, so like I said, just remember, because Jewish people, and actually many, many other people, we say, never forget, and never again. That means